Beneath your feet, right now, there are thousands of caves. Dark, silent, stretching for miles underground. Most people will never go near them, but some people can't resist. Every year, thousands of explorers crawl into the Earth's darkest places. Some go for adventure, some go for science, and some go in and never come back. These are the worst cave deaths in history. Sand Cave, Kentucky, United States, January 30th, 1925. Floyd Collins was a 37-year-old farmer and cave explorer from Kentucky. In the 1920s, cave tourism was big business in Kentucky. Floyd had one dream: find a new cave entrance that he could turn into a tourist attraction and finally make some money. On January 30th, he crawled alone into a narrow cave called Sand Cave. He squeezed through tight passages, deeper and deeper, looking for something spectacular. Then he tried to squeeze through a particularly tight crawlway, and that's when a 27-pound rock shifted and landed directly on his left leg. He was pinned, completely stuck, 150 feet inside the cave, in a passage so narrow that a grown man could barely fit through it. Floyd screamed for help. Eventually, people heard him, and word spread fast. A local newspaper reporter named Skeets Miller actually crawled into the cave and reached Floyd. He brought food, water, and a light bulb connected to a wire for warmth. Miller interviewed Floyd underground and published the stories in the Louisville Courier-Journal. The articles went national, then international. And that's when things got bizarre. Thousands of people traveled to Sand Cave, not to help, to watch. It became a carnival. Hot dog stands appeared, souvenir sellers set up shop, a man sold balloons. People treated a man's death trap like a county fair. Meanwhile, Floyd Collins was slowly dying underground, alone, in the dark, in the cold. On February 4th, the passage collapsed further. Nobody could reach Floyd anymore. A rescue team began digging a lateral shaft from the surface, racing against time. It took them 12 more days. When the shaft finally broke through on February 16th, they reached Floyd Collins. He had been underground for 17 days. He was dead. Cause of death? Exposure, dehydration, and starvation. But the story doesn't end there. Floyd's body was eventually removed and placed in a glass-topped coffin at a tourist cave. His body was displayed as a paying attraction. People paid money to look at a dead man in a glass box. It took until 1989 before Floyd Collins was finally given a proper burial. Mossdale Caverns, Yorkshire Dales, England, United Kingdom, June 24, 1967. 6 young men, all experienced cavers, all friends. On a Saturday afternoon, they entered the Mossdale Cavern system in the Yorkshire Dales for what should have been a routine exploration trip. Mossdale was known to be challenging. The passages were tight. Some sections were partially submerged. But these 6 men had done this before. They knew the caves. They trusted their skills. What they didn't know was what was happening above them. While they explored deep underground, a violent thunderstorm rolled across the Yorkshire Dales. Rain pounded the surface. And in caves, surface rain doesn't stay on the surface. Water poured into the Mossdale system through every crack, every fissure, every entrance. The passages that the 6 men had walked through began to flood, rapidly, unstoppably. The water rose behind them, cutting off their escape route. Every passage they might have used to get out was now completely filled with rushing, freezing water. All 6 men drowned underground. They were David Adamson, Jeffrey Bentley, William Frakes, Michael Ryan, Colin Vickers, and John Ogden. When rescuers entered the cave on Monday, they found the bodies in different passages. Some had clearly tried to find air pockets. Some had tried to outrun the water. None of them made it. It remains the worst caving disaster in British history. 6 experienced men killed not by the cave itself, but by a storm they never saw coming. Nutty Putty Cave, Utah, United States, November 24, 2009, the day before Thanksgiving. John Edward Jones was 26 years old, a medical student, a husband, a father of 1 daughter with a second baby on the way. He went caving with his brother Josh and a group of friends, 12 people in total. John was not an experienced caver, but Nutty Putty Cave was popular with beginners. It had named sections with fun names like the birth canal and the aorta. John wanted to find a section called the birth canal. He thought he found it. He squeezed head first into a narrow descending passage, but it wasn't the birth canal. It was an unmapped passage, and it was much, much tighter. The passage narrowed to just 10 inches by 18 inches, smaller than a laptop screen, and it angled downward at nearly 70 degrees. John's chest compressed, his arms were pinned ahead of him. He couldn't push himself back. Gravity was pulling him deeper. He was stuck head first, almost completely upside down, in a space smaller than a mailbox. And he couldn't move, not an inch. His brother Josh crawled in after him, saw the situation, and immediately went for help. Over the next 27 hours, 137 rescuers worked desperately to free John Jones. The passage was so tight that rescuers could barely reach him. They could touch his feet, but couldn't get a grip. They rigged a rope and pulley system attached to his legs and managed to pull him partway up. John could talk. He was relieved. He told them he could feel himself moving. Then the anchor bolts in the cave ceiling failed. The rope went slack, and John slid back down the passage deeper than before. Now the situation was worse, much worse. The passage had narrowed even further around him. His body weight combined with gravity made it physically impossible to move him. John was upside down. Blood was rushing to his head. His heart was under enormous strain from the inverted position. He could barely breathe because his chest was compressed against the rock. He spoke to his wife on the phone. He told her he loved her. He told her he was sorry. After 27 hours stuck in that passage, John Edward Jones went into cardiac arrest and died. He was still upside down, in the dark, in a space the size of a mailbox, 100 feet underground. His body could not be recovered. The passage was too narrow, the angle too steep, the risk too great. Nutty Putty Cave was permanently sealed. Workers poured concrete over the entrance. John Edward Jones is still inside that cave today. He will be there forever. His wife gave birth to their second daughter a few months later. Bushman's Hole, Northern Cape Province, South Africa, January 8, 2005. Some people don't die in caves by accident. They die trying to do something noble. Bushman's Hole is the deepest freshwater cave in the world, over 270 meters straight down, nearly 3 football fields of pitch-black water, getting colder and darker with every meter. In 1994, a 20-year-old diver named Dion Dreyer drowned at the bottom of Bushman's Hole. His body sank to 270 meters, unreachable. His family was told they would never be able to bury their son. 10 years later, in 2004, an Australian diver named Dave Shaw broke the world record for the deepest cave dive at Bushman's Hole, and at the bottom, 270 meters down, he found something. Dion Dreyer's body, still there after 10 years, preserved by the cold water. Shaw contacted the Dreyer family and made them a promise he would return and bring Dion home. On January 8, 2005, Dave Shaw descended into Bushman's Hole with a body bag. At 270 meters, the pressure is enormous. Nitrogen narcosis makes you confused, drowsy, and unable to think clearly. Shaw had exactly 3 minutes at that depth before the risks became unsurvivable. He reached Dreyer's body and began placing it in the bag, but the body was tangled in old guidelines. Shaw struggled to free it. His 3 minutes became 4, then 5. Shaw's helmet camera recorded everything.
The footage shows his movements becoming slower, less coordinated, more confused. The nitrogen narcosis was taking hold. His brain was shutting down. Dave Shaw stopped moving. At 270 meters below the surface, one of the world's greatest cave divers died doing what he believed was right, keeping a promise to a grieving family. But the story has one final chapter. Days later, both bodies, Shaw and Dreyer, floated to the surface on their own. Gas from decomposition lifted them up from the depths. After 10 years, Dion Dreyer finally came home, and Dave Shaw came home with him. Plura Cave, Nordland County, Norway.
Plura Cave is an underwater cave system in one of the most extreme locations on Earth, inside the Arctic Circle in Norway. The water temperature is 4 degrees Celsius, just above freezing, one of the most hostile environments a human being can enter. 2 experienced Finnish cave divers, Jari Hutarinen and Janne Suhonen, entered the Plura system for a deep exploration dive. They were experienced. They had the right equipment. They had done dives like this before. Deep inside the flooded cave system, something went wrong with Jari Hutarinen's equipment. He lost consciousness underwater. Suhonen tried desperately to save his partner, but at depth, in near-freezing water, in total darkness, in a space where you can barely turn around, there is almost nothing you can do. Suhonen had to make an impossible decision: stay and die with his friend, or leave and try to save himself. He left. He barely made it out alive. By the time he reached the surface, he was suffering from severe hypothermia. He nearly died himself. But the tragedy didn't end there. When Norwegian authorities organized a recovery mission to retrieve Hutarinen's body, they called in experienced cave divers from Finland. One of those recovery divers, Kai Kenkanen, also died during the attempt. 2 deaths from one cave, one during exploration, one during the attempt to bring the first body home. Tham Luang Cave, Chiang Rai Province, Thailand, June 23, 2018. This is the story that the entire world watched unfold. On June 23rd, after football practice, 12 boys from the Wild Boars football team and their 25-year-old assistant coach walked into the Tham Luang Cave. They had been inside before. It was a local adventure, a fun thing to do after practice. But this time, the monsoon rains came early. Water flooded the cave system with terrifying speed, cutting off their exit. The 13 of them retreated deeper and deeper into the cave, trying to stay ahead of the rising water. They ended up 4 kilometers inside the cave, on a small rock shelf just above the waterline, in complete darkness. For 10 days, nobody knew if they were alive or dead. The outside world erupted. Over 1,000 people descended on the cave entrance, rescue teams from around the globe, Thai Navy SEALs, British cave diving experts, American military, engineers from around the world. Elon Musk even offered a mini submarine. On day 10, 2 British cave divers, Rick Stanton and John Volanthen, finally reached the boys. They surfaced in the chamber where the boys were huddled together on the rock. The boys were alive, thin, exhausted, but alive. Their coach, a former Buddhist monk, had taught them to meditate to stay calm and conserve energy. It may have saved their lives. But finding them was only half the problem. Getting them out was nearly impossible. The route out involved diving through flooded, narrow, pitch-dark passages for over 3 hours. Most of the boys couldn't swim. None of them had ever used diving equipment. The rescue plan was extraordinary and terrifying. Each boy would be given anti-anxiety medication to keep them calm, bordering on sedated. Then an expert diver would guide each boy through the flooded passages, one at a time. If a boy panicked underwater, both the boy and the diver could drown. But before the rescue began, tragedy struck. On July 6th, Saman Kunan, a 38-year-old former Thai Navy SEAL who had volunteered for the mission, was delivering oxygen tanks along the rescue route. On his return trip, he ran out of air.
His dive partner found him unconscious underwater. They brought him to the surface, but it was too late. Saman Kunan was dead. A man who had volunteered to save 13 strangers gave his life trying. The King of Thailand promoted him to lieutenant commander posthumously. The entire nation mourned. Despite the loss, the rescue continued. On July 8th, the first 4 boys were brought out. On July 9th, 4 more. On July 10th, the final 4 boys and their coach emerged from the cave. All 13 survived. After 18 days underground, 4 kilometers inside a flooded cave, in complete darkness, without food, 12 boys and their coach walked back into the sunlight. Saman Kunan did not. Caves don't care who you are. They don't care if you're experienced or a beginner. They don't care if you're a child on an adventure or a world record-holding diver on a mission of mercy. These stories share one truth. Beneath the surface of our world lies another world, one of absolute darkness, suffocating silence, and unforgiving stone, a world that humans were never designed to enter. And yet, we keep going in, because that's what we do. We explore, we push boundaries, and sometimes we don't come back. If you found this video important, subscribe and hit the bell.